So welcome, Jolynn. I'm glad you're here. And today the goal is to talk about the writing project, excuse me, and answer any questions that you might have. So are you okay if I share the writing project prompt first and then answer questions that are not on the prompt?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, and then I want to invite you to please interrupt me during the time that I'm talking about the prompt itself. You can interrupt me and say, wait, and just ask me a question. I'd rather you do that than wait till the end about a topic
Okay.
that we're discussing. Okay, fantastic. So I just want to start out by saying ethical argument is the most difficult text that we are going to read. And it's one of those texts that when I read it, I only read a few pages at a time. And when I go back, I only read a few pages at a time because it is a heavy book, meaning that there's a lot of concepts there, a lot of things to think about, and it's easy to get confused. So I just like to open it up and share that some texts are that way. Some texts are where you can only handle a few pages at a time. Other texts, it's you can just read, many at once. You can sit and read a book in a sitting, because you're that interested. So, and it's easy to access. Okay, so the key question is based on the writing prompt, and I always ask a question because then that way students can understand what we're looking for. And the question is, what is an unethical law, stated or implied, or occurrence that needs to be changed or responded to? And the writing project itself is choose an unethical law, stated or implied, or occurrence, and argue why it's unethical in a multi-paragraph essay, using the ideas within ethical argument in your paper, including the procedure of verification and fallacy. There are two topics that are off the table, and I need to make sure that I put this in writing as well. And one of those is abortion. Abortion has been discussed a lot, and it is legal to have an abortion. I do understand that the topic has come back up based on the laws about when and that sort of thing. But it's been discussed a lot, so it's kind of an older topic. And then the other is gay marriage. We already have gay marriage. I don't want to continue having that conversation. So I want you to choose something that you are interested in, though, something that you feel passionate about something
So like
that happened.
maybe like immigration or like discrimination against races. Is that okay?
That could be something, but I want to make sure it's either an unethical law, stated or implied, or a specific occurrence. So the topics that you brought up, you can do it as an implied law or a stated law, or you can look at a particular occurrence that happened and focus in on the problem with that. So for example, sometimes people write about gun laws, and then a specific occurrence that a student wrote about was the Las Vegas shootings and how that was handled. So that's a very specific occurrence. So I just want to throw that out there just to let you know that you could discuss a specific occurrence. And another example could be the handling of the COVID-19 virus. And you could talk about how it was handled back in China and what the ethical thing is about how something is shared and what rights do we have as citizens to know. You could talk about, for example, I mean, there's all sorts of issues that go with that. That's very timely. I went to Costco just to get my regular toilet paper. I could not get it because people are hoarding. And so I had to buy it at the supermarket. So there's just different things that you can write about regarding that. And so, yeah, there's lots of things you can choose to do. And if anyone wants to email me and ask me a question about, hey, a prompt option, does this sound good? I'm happy to answer that question.
Okay.
It is 1,500 words. I want to show you in a Google Doc, and like I said, if you go back, Jolynn, and take a look at the video here, I'm just opening up our spring calendar. I'm going to Tools, and if you look at Tools, there's a place, just the second item down is word count, and you could open it up and you can check mark display word count while typing. That's not necessary, but that's a way for you to look at the word count if you want to. One thing that is important is that that you understand is that a page tends to be about 250 words. So this is approximately a 6-page writing project. And I ask students to please include the word count at the end of the text. What it needs to include, you do need to mention ethical argument. And it's really important, my suggestion is that you mention ethical argument early on. You do not want to mention it too late, because you're using the procedure of verification / justification in order to discuss your issue within the framework of whether it is ethical or not. And you're talking about something that's unethical, so you're saying that it's unethical. You want to be able to use the book early on. You do need to have outside sources, both from the library and and you can have them from the internet if you would like. However, if you're like discussing something like the COVID-19 virus, the library source might be something about how you ethically deal with infectious diseases.
So for library sources, does that count as like online when they have the for like ProQuest?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
anything from the library. And I often, as a teacher, go to the library and talk to the librarians. And if you bring the prompt in, they can also help you as well. The librarians are so important. And a lot of times it's kind of like, how do I go about looking in the library? How can, all of these things, a librarian is very happy to help students. So if you are on campus and can go to the library and would like a little help with that, you can sure get it. You also need to include a visual, okay? And I want to talk about that in a moment. Every writing project is going to include a visual, and the visual can be a video clip if you wanted it to be, or it can actually be a still shot, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. You do need to follow MLA. I'm going to send some information, a VoiceThread tutorial if you need it, a link to Purdue OWL. That is very important that you format your paper properly. That shows a teacher that you know how to follow instructions. So even if you have to format a paper for your chemistry class, for example, in a different way, at least you know to ask about the format. And then this is really critical, I want you to please write in the third person for this type of essay. So please avoid using personal pronouns. And a lot of times students will write, "in my opinion," and then they have the rest of the sentence. A lot of time if you write, "in my opinion," or "I believe that," if you just take that part off, the rest of the sentence is good. In scholarly writing, it is understood that that it's your point of view.
I have another question about this idea. Are we able to like interview someone?
Absolutely. Yes, yes. And if you have a writer's reference, they do have interview citation rules. And I'm pretty sure Purdue OWL does, but even if you looked up MLA, MLA citation, personal interview, I bet you would find out how to cite it properly.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, if you decided to do an interview and you wanted to include it as a visual, like the video as a visual, that would be wonderful as well. Okay. So I want to talk to you about my handout, incorporating visuals, and I also want to talk about Google Docs at the same time. And I recognize that you aren't able to see this, Jolynn, but if you decide to go back just to this part of the video, you can take a look. It's easy to, just scroll across YouTube and take a look at that. So I'm getting the incorporating visuals to come up. It's taking a moment because Zoom is wonderful, except that it takes a little bit of time. So incorporating visuals, I'm going to first talk about Google, and then I'll talk to you about incorporating the visuals. So whenever you have a Google Doc, if you have a Google Doc that is mine and you want your own copy so that you can type into it, you go to File, or you just want it for your own copy because after the class you won't have access. You're like, oh, I want to keep that forever. You go to File, you click on Make a Copy, and for making a copy, I always recommend that you put your initials or something that reminds you of it. I'm just going to put Janet ML. That way I know that it's my copy, and I hit OK. And I'm getting a copy right now. So if you're using a Google Doc at all, whether it is a new Google Doc that you've written on, or it is a copy of somebody else's and you're going to have to turn it in to a class, it is really important that you share it so that people can see it. So I want to show you here, right here it says share, and it has a lock. And that indicates to you that the only person that can see it is you. So I go to share, and it's taking a moment because there's always a buffer here. I go to share. I'm going to hit advanced. Please don't email me a copy of your papers of any sort. And I'm just saying that for all students, Jolynn, not to you. You go see where it says private. You're going to change that. And you're going to hit on anyone with a link, and either that anyone with a link can edit, can comment, or view. Now, if it's something that you're turning in as a paper to your teacher, you can choose just view. You can choose comment. If you're creating a Google Doc for your friends and you to work on, or Google Slides, you can click on edit, and then everybody can work on the document at the same time. So whatever you choose, I'm choosing view here. You hit save, and you want to do that right away so that you don't forget later on about making sure that when you turn something in and you're turning in the link, that everyone can see it. Okay? So now I'm going to talk about the actual incorporating visuals. So incorporating visuals is a handout that discusses multimodal text. And what multimodal means is that it is visual in some sort of way that's beyond text-based writing. So it can be a still visual. It can be something you can see and listen to. It can be a video. But in choosing a visual to include with a piece of writing, you want to choose something that if your piece of writing doesn't have it, it's lacking. You're going to choose something that makes a big difference. And in my English 1C class that I teach face-to-face, they're also watching the Holocaust films. And I had a student share the other day how much she appreciated that I was assigning the films, because the films helped her to understand the Holocaust in a way that just reading about it didn't. Now, I realize you haven't, done all your film stuff just yet, but you will start seeing those films and you're going to understand that comment. That just reading Sophie Scholl and the White Rose, it helped her understand, but watching film helped her understand it even more. And that's the guideline. That's something that you want to include, something that's going to help people understand what you're writing about better than just text alone. And so there's several different types of visuals that you can choose. You can choose a still photograph, which you take or someone else takes. You label it at the bottom, whatever figure number it is. If it's the first figure, you would put figure 1. In my handout, it's figure 2. And then you put a colon, and then you name what it's called. You can use a diagram. You can use an infographic. You can use a table, a pie chart, or a graph. And these are ones that you can find or ones that you can create yourself. You can choose a flowchart. Now this flowchart is, my sample is small. I made it small just because of having you go through the handout. You want to make sure that whatever you're trying to show is big enough for the people to read. You could use a map, you know, all sorts of things. And I have some information about how to place the visual into your writing. Again, you want to choose a visual that enhances the reader's understanding of part or whole of the text. You're going to center your visual within a paragraph near where you mention it. Right under the visual, you're going to write figure 1 or A, and if you add another one, you're going to note it as figure B, 2 or B, and so on. And then you can add the title or description of it if it's there, if it's available. In your writing, you need to refer to the visual. You should point out and or analyze the detail from the visual. Some suggestions to introduce it are as follows. Notice in figure 1 or as shown as in figure 1. And then you're going to cite your visual in the works cited. And I have sample MLA works cited rules for you here to take a look at. And then I have included some guidelines for analyzing a multimodal text. Okay. So I know you can't see it, but do you have any questions about it at this point?
No, it seems pretty straightforward.
All right. Sounds good. So now I'm going to go back to the writing prompt here. And I have included intense pre-writing. So I wanted to take a moment for you to take a look at my intense pre-writing guidelines. And then I will answer questions and then we will be done, unless you need to leave.
No, I'm fine.
All right, so I have a handout called Intense Pre-Writing Instructions. And I include an intense pre-writing because the writing that you do before you actually write your draft is really important. And in fact, every activity that you're doing right now is helping prepare you for your writing project. And the writing that you do after you write your draft is also helping you with your handy dandy writing project. So I've designed some activities to help purposely prepare you to compose your first draft. I call them intense because they're intended to sharpen your focus and help you get those first words on the page. I have links out to all 4 of the different types of pre-writing that I'm having you do. And down the line, the reason why I'm having you do intense pre-writing is that I give you several strategies to help you think about how to compose so that when you're writing down the line, whether it is for academics or for your personal aspects, these can help you. So I have a looped free writing, I have listing and clustering, scratch outline, and a tentative thesis, and I just want to talk about those really briefly. And I don't want you to focus so much on the instructions that you get your pre-writing perfect. I want you to understand that pre-writing is there to help you compose your first draft, not meant to be this perfect assignment. So looped free writing helps you to just get some ideas down on the page. And I invite you to set up a timer on your phone for 15 or 20 minutes. And you have the prompt in front of you. And you can physically write it by hand and then scan all of your pre-writing and turn it in, or you can do it directly typing on the computer, whatever works best for you. A lot of times writing by hand helps you really learn the material more, but if you are somebody who writes right on the computer, you can do that as well. So I have you start writing, and you keep your pen to the paper, or you're just typing the entire time. And if you start out and you do not know what to say, or you think the assignment is stupid, or whatever it is you want to write, or you're thinking about lunch, you just write. This is so stupid, I hate this dumb assignment, I don't know what to write. And eventually, if you're just continuing to write, you're going to get into the topic itself. After 15 or 20 minutes, you go back and you reread it. And if it's on the paper itself, you can just underline or circle key ideas that you think you might want to write about. If it's on Google Doc of some sort or Word, you can underline or highlight ideas that you might want to go back and revisit. Then what you do, and you can do it all in one sitting, or you can spread it out over a period of time, you choose one of the ideas from that first free writing, and this is called looping, and you're going to loop back and you're going to focus just on that one idea. And you're going to set the timer for 5 to 10 minutes and just write on that one idea. And then you're going to go back and you can go through and circle more ideas on that second free writing, or you can go back to the first pre-writing or free writing, and you can go with another idea and set the timer and work on that again. Now, I only have you turn in a few pages of this, but you can continue to do this again and again. You're looping back and you're going in deeper. It's getting you to go in deeply to think about your writing.
So can we just like do bullet points then, or do we have to like do formally like write something out like in a paragraph? Or
you don't need to. Okay, if the ideas come out in bullets, you can put it in bullets, but I just want you to write. I don't want you to worry about paragraphing. I don't want you to worry about, is this a complete sentence or not? Free writing tends to come out in like one long paragraph. I will tell you that you are going to take your ideas from your looped free writing, and you're either going to list or you're going to cluster them. So, yeah. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I understood what you meant. I was just confused at first whether or not like it had to be like a formal thing, or if we could just do our list.
Yeah, whatever works for you. You're going to eventually put the ideas from the free writing into the list. The free writing, the rule is you are writing continuously for those 15 to 20 minutes. You don't pick up your pen and you don't think. You just try to get it out onto the paper. And you'll be surprised that just starting to write, you write one thing and it makes you think about another thing, which makes you think about another thing.
Yeah.
Gets the flow going. The listing, there's no time frame. You're either going to list your ideas out in bullet form that you want to make sure that you are touching on, or you're going to do like a bubble cluster. And you've probably done both of these before in other English classes. The clustering is the idea in the center with the little spokes out or lines out, and organizing it. And then what you're going to do is you are going to work on a rough or a scratch outline. And it's not a formal outline, although if you want to do a formal one, you could, but it's just getting your ideas, your claims that you want to cover, and some evidence and maybe a little bit of analysis, and putting it into an order that you might write on. You can change it later on because the act of writing is the act of learning. And so you may have your ideas in a certain order, and then you may later on decide to change that order, and that's fine. But this kind of gets you to think about, okay, I want to write about this first, this makes sense, and then I want to go to this, and then I want to go to this. And then the last thing is tentative thesis, and I have a lot of support for thesis. So you can go onto my thesis page if you need a lot of support. You can look at my thesis page. If you're good at thesis statements and you're good with that, you can just take a quick look. The key thing that I want to note, though, about this tentative thesis that I want you to turn in is the word tentative. And what that means is that when you are writing, that thesis is tentative because you haven't turned in your paper. And like I said, the act of writing is the act of learning. And so you may change your thesis statement in the middle of writing your paper, or at the end of writing your paper, or at any point in time. So it's tentative until you turn in your paper. And I always recommend that students write a tentative thesis and then they print it out, kind of big. They print it out and they have it beside of them as they're composing. And the reason for this is so that you have your thesis there and you can make changes to your thesis if you want to, and or to make sure you're really focusing in on that thesis, that's what your ideas are connecting back to. And I will tell you that when I was in college, I would write my paper on the computer, and then I would want to look at my thesis, and I would scroll up and read my thesis, and then scroll down and then forget my train of thought. So if you have it right there, you can just take a quick glance at it, and then it can help you stay focused. So I also want to point out that these intense pre-writing strategies are meant to help you compose your bigger paper. And when I ask you to turn in a draft of your paper, I'm asking you to turn in a completed draft, meaning that I expect it to be about 1,500 words. And the reason for that is that I want you to really turn in a paper where you could receive some really good feedback from your peers. I assign, if you've turned in your paper on time, you are assigned at random. I don't even know who you're assigned. It's just random. 2 peers. And if you get both of your peers' papers, you're going to do 2 peer reviews. If you only get 1, you'll do the 1. It's better to get 2 because the more papers you read, that helps you. The more you peer review somebody else's paper, the better it helps you. The more somebody peer reviews your paper, the better it helps you. It's a win-win. But if you only get 1 paper to peer review and or you receive only 1 peer review, at least you've received 1. I always recommend going to the writing center and having somebody take a look at some specific aspects of your paper. If you have questions for me about your paper, you can send a sentence or a couple of sentences or a short paragraph or part of a paragraph. I do not read whole papers before they're turned into me, and there's a really good reason for that. Students tend to privilege my feedback over others, and what I'm trying to empower you to do is to receive feedback and then make choices about what you want to do to improve your own paper. And sometimes people give you feedback that you don't like, and you don't have to follow it. You can do whatever you want with your feedback, but I want to empower students to make conscious decisions about their own writing. Okay?
Okay.
Do you have any other questions about the writing project?
No, or if we know other peers in the class and they have peer reviews, can we like maybe look at others, like not necessarily grade it ourselves or like go over it ourselves, but like maybe just take a glance at how other people are writing, like their styles?
Yes, what's going to happen is you will have the 2 papers at random sent to you, 2 people's names, and then you're supposed to send each other the peer reviews. You just go to the inbox and find them in the inbox in your class and send it that way. But the day of the peer review, I always have students who did not turn their paper in on time, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't turn it in. How do I get a peer review? And I set up a discussion forum where you can request to have somebody peer review your paper, and or you can say, hey, I'm willing to look at another paper. So if you know people in the class and you want to in that discussion forum, or you just want to go to the inbox and say, hey, how about we trade papers and take a look? That's fine too. And there's extra credit available for doing an extra peer review. So you can, you turn that in, and I give you a little extra credit for that if you want to. So yes, the answer is yes, but that's basically how I do it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, not at the moment.
All right. Do you have any questions about ethical argument?
No, I think I started getting it because I went back and reread some of the chapters.
Yes, yes. Reading is rereading, and then at some point you're like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
Go back and you reread, you're like, oh, I'm getting it more. That is academic reading at its best. You read it and you're like, I don't know if I get this completely. You're annotating your book, and then you read a little bit further, and then you go back and revise or review the reading and reread. So good. Glad to hear it, Jolene. All right. Well, if that's the case and you don't have any more questions for me, I will end our meeting, but I wanted to say thank you for coming. And if you want to take a look at the video, you can. All you have to do is go to Zoom and say the assignment and say, I attended, and I see that you've attended. Everybody else, you're going to watch the video and do the summary and turn that in.